This is Donna Zedler, and I'm recording this interview with my friend Wes HIEU341 as my oral history project for History of the United States 341. I'm recording this interview on December 9th, 2018, via FaceTime. Wes, hi.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Taking time out of your schedule. Until recently, you were an employee of mine in the bakery at Public Supermarkets, and I am also glad to count you as a friend.
Aw, I'm glad to count you the same.
I chose you to interview because I find that you're well studied on current events, you have a keen interest in history and politics, and you express your thoughts well. So, those are all compliments for
Thank you.
you, and I'm glad that you're here with me. So, part of what makes you an interesting person to discuss current events with is your unique perspective. Could you please describe to me your service to the United States, when it occurred, and where you traveled over your tenure?
All right. I joined in August of '99, and I served through March of '04.
That was the
After
Navy?
that, yes, I was in the Navy. Sorry about
Okay.
that, but yeah, 4.5 years total. After boot camp and A school, where we learned whatever trade we would do, I was sent to Japan. It wasn't one of the places I would have picked, but it ended up being one of the best places to go ever. For the first 2 years, I was on shore duty, which didn't do a really whole lot. I mean, besides my regular day job, went on a ship, so a lot of drinking and really enjoying Japan. But after that, I went to the USS Kitty Hawk, the forward deployed naval carrier out of Yokosuka, Japan, and from then went to a bunch of different places: Hong Kong, Singapore, Guam. Spent a month on Guam. That was nice.
Wow.
But from I think it was the beginning of I think it was '03 when the Iraq War started. We were there, not when it started. I think we relieved the Lincoln, which had been there a while. So we took over for them doing flight operations in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay, so you saw pilots and planes come and go that were going into
Oh
the
yeah,
zone.
all the time,
So you were
all the time.
familiar with the operations, from your end of things.
Yep, yes
Very,
I
very
am.
good. Well, I appreciate your service, and
No, no problem.
I think you had a cool opportunity. I think, the places you were able to see, and
Yeah, I still love Japan and can't wait to go back.
yeah, my husband too. One of these days I'll get to go as well. What was your actual job? What did you do?
I was a postal clerk, which is basically a mailman. So yeah, just delivering mail, sorting it all, and when I was on shore, that was we were the hub for where all the mail came in too. So we had to sort it all for ships wherever it was going. If it was going to the Pacific in the Navy or Marine Corps, well, mainly Navy, it came through us. So
Wow,
that was kind of a big job, but it had a lot of perks.
that's a super important
Really
job,
liked
though.
it.
Yeah, you kept
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Yeah,
And this was before email was just catching on, so we are still doing a lot of mail, and people still couldn't wait to get things from back home. And
yeah, yeah, that's really
yeah,
important. So, when I asked you to come up with something that you'd like to discuss for your informed perspective, you decided on an issue which is contemporary and still very much in the news. Can you
yeah.
tell me what that is?
That I'm rather discontent with the way that the Iraq War is portrayed, both in the media and by many politicians nowadays. It's kind of presented like it's just a given that, oh yeah, it was the wrong thing to do. We shouldn't
Okay,
have done that, and everybody agrees. And
right.
like, no, that's not right, because there was a lot of discussion about it at the time.
Hmm.
And if you're against it, I don't mind, and I'm sure people have their various reasons for not being against it. What really pisses me off is uh, politicians, especially, who were for it, but now they're against it,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
kind of feels like a betrayal. You're going to send us out there to fight, and then once it's over, once it's not politically popular, thanks to the media,
right.
you say, "Oh, well, yeah, that was wrong. We should have made you do that." Think about it more next time.
Sure, sure. So let's delve into it a little bit. My understanding is that you believe that the reasons for the U.S. Instigation of war in Iraq were justified. Can you explain to me, in your opinion, what those reasons were?
Well, a lot of people seem to forget that was just after 9/11, and we were scared. If you would have told anybody, even in 2005, that nothing like that's going to happen for another 17 years, they would not believe
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
So we were looking to make sure. that nothing like that happened. And while uh, we weren't scared of Saddam directly attacking us, what we were scared of was that he would have used chemical weapons and give them to a terrorist who would be able to infiltrate the U.S. and
Sure.
get him over there, because we knew he'd had them. We knew he'd used them before. We didn't find any. I still don't think that that doesn't mean he didn't have them. It just means we didn't find them.
Okay. What about your particular realm of experience gives you insight into why the Iraq War was justified? Did you?
I think. Oh, I think being on the ship, it really wasn't a question of whether we needed to do it or not. The captain would just tell us that, yeah, he's saber rattling, and I think that most of the people on the ship were like, okay, yeah, it's time we take this guy out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were of the same opinion as me. Like, we probably should have done this back in '91 and just finished it there, but
Sure.
we didn't. I think a lot of it, a lot of, even mine, was just, yeah, we should have done this a long time ago, so let's go finish it now.
Yeah.
And I didn't really hear a whole lot of dissent about it on the ship. But of course, we also didn't have the 24/7 media. We didn't have
Yeah.
access to CNN and everything on all the time. It was just the Armed Forces Service, which is an hour of this program, an hour of that program.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't whatever channel we wanted to watch all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you were in the service during the lead up to Iraq. I mean, that was the period of time, where 9/11 happened, where all of the discussion was going on about who were the bad guys. And I think that was a really important period of time, and it was interesting that that was your period that you were there,
Yeah,
and so you sort of had a front seat to what was going on.
yeah, yeah,
Let's see. Let me share a little bit about my own recollection from 2001 and '02. I was a young mother at the time. I'm a little bit older than you. Um, I followed politics pretty closely at the time, and after 9/11, there was definitely a drumbeat to punish the people who perpetrated the attacks on the Twin Towers, and I
yeah,
definitely supported that. I mean, the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, Pennsylvania. Um,
yeah,
the war against the Taliban focusing on Afghanistan seemed to make a logical connection to
yeah,
9/11. The Taliban was implicated. They definitely had
yeah.
self-implicated, right?
Yes, exactly. And they weren't going to correct their behavior or do anything, so we
Right. So
said, all right.
that was a straight line. Those are bad guys. Let's go get them. And I think that people really supported that. When it came to Iraq, however, there seemed to be sort of a murkiness of logic that Bush and the administration were drawing a line to Saddam Hussein as well, but people weren't entirely sure of why. I think that
Yeah,
was how it felt here. Um,
yeah,
his axis of evil speech certainly focused on Iraq and Hussein. He was
yeah.
pushing that way of going. Ultimately, however, there were no connections between Saddam and 9/11, no direct connections.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Following the deployment, as facts began to emerge, many people, including myself, felt a little betrayed and manipulated by the administration's push toward war because people like Colin Powell had come out and said, well, the information was faulty and maybe I would have said
Yeah,
something different. So people kind of felt a little bit manipulated. At the same time, I wanted a safe world for my children. That was super important to me. 9/11 shook up my entire world. And
yeah.
so,
Everybody's.
yeah, and as an army sibling, I had a lot at stake. My brother was in Iraq. He was deployed
Yeah.
twice. He was deployed twice to Afghanistan. So he was in the thick of it as well.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah,
yeah,
more than I was.
mm, yeah, he's a
Yeah,
helicopter mechanic, but he jumps out of airplanes and he saw the helicopter crashes and had to rescue people. And he saw so much, and he had someone killed on watch duty right next to him one night. And
wow.
yeah, so my brother really saw a lot. So there was a lot at stake for my family as well. I felt like I needed to trust my president. And in the end, many of us felt like our anger and fear were used to punish the bad guys, which is really important, but at the same time to accomplish a larger political objective in Iraq. From your vantage point, do you think that the intelligence was manipulated, or do you feel like the intelligence was pretty clear cut?
At the time, I thought the intelligence was good. The top people in the government said it was good. People that I would trust, like W and
Right.
Dick Cheney. I still like Dick Cheney. I don't know why he gets such a bad reputation.
Yeah, he does
I know
get
I,
sort of the mastermind, the
I
evil
know I some
mastermind
of it,
reputation. Yeah.
but I do think that you're right. It would have gone better if he just would have stuck with one line This is why we're doing
Mhm.
this instead of this two and this two and this
Right.
two. Wait a minute, what about that one? You just said that. Well, no, this one. Let's focus on this one.
Right. And
No,
it
just
was cloudy.
stick right. Yeah,
Yeah. And people were scared. I think, 2 years later, people were still scared. I mean, people didn't
oh yeah,
understand exactly what had happened. I think we still don't entirely understand what happened. We've got a
no,
narrative and we have some steps and we have some clues, but people wanted to feel like they were going to be safe, whatever it took to make
yeah, yeah,
themselves, their families, and their country safe. They were going to support. I mean, I remember the night that the bombing began, and I remember sitting in front of the television screen, and people were cheering and excited about it. And in retrospect, I thought, wow, that's a little harsh.
yeah,
But it was
yeah,
that feeling of revenge and anger that I think that Bush tapped into, maybe unfairly.
yeah.
Do you feel that Bush and the intelligence community misled Congress and the American people?
That's another thing. I really don't know all the information for the lead up because, like I said, my TV services were limited, so I didn't get to see
Mhm.
all the hearings and everybody else back and forth talk about it.
Mhm.
But like I said, my feeling was that we should have taken him out a long time ago. So
Yeah. Well, just like in Afghanistan, how we left a little fomenting bit of angst and anger there that ended up quadrupling and becoming so large, and we then had to go take it on again. And it did feel
yeah,
like with Saddam, we hadn't quite closed out what we had intended to do
yeah,
in the Persian
yeah.
Gulf War, which happened the year I graduated from high school. So this is all
Oh yeah.
very, present history for me and my time as well. So I'm glad you brought it up because I
And
feel like,
something I didn't know until these last couple of years that in the original in the Gulf War, when I do remember the that Saddam attacking the Israelis, trying to get them involved, going to turn it into a regional conflict.
mm-hmm,
But but we went to the Israelis and said, if you don't respond, we will make sure to take him out.
yeah,
The Israelis are still angry about that, and I don't blame them.
yeah, they feel
Which,
like we didn't come to their defense
yeah.
adequately.
So,
Well, let's go off on a little tangent here. The War
okay.
Powers Resolution of 1973 establishes that an American president may only deploy the armed forces either after a congressional declaration of war or in a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, its territories, or its armed forces. In 2002, President Bush requested an open ended authorization for his execution of the war powers at his own discretion. The wars in Korea and Vietnam were never declared by Congress. Do you have a problem with Congress ceding its responsibility for declaring war to the executive?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I do too. I feel like it would have been one thing to say, okay, we're thinking about this and asking for that resolution, but then he needed to go back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it needs to.
like you said, the it was a direct line to an event to
Mhm.
the Taliban.
Right.
To Iraq, that was a different thing. There was
Right.
convincing people. There was arguments. There was discussions
Mhm.
about, all right, is this necessary? Will this help us? Will
Mhm.
this help us keep us secure? For that, I think it wasn't an immediate thing. He
Right.
should have definitely went to Congress.
Right. Right. It should be a joint thing. I think that Congress and the president need to concur.
Yes,
Right? Because
but
my next question was, do you feel it removes a necessary check on the president's power?
yep.
Yeah.
And I feel like Congress has done that anyway. Not even, I mean, with other issues than wars, ceded way too
Mhm.
much of its authority to the
Mhm.
president.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm pretty mad at Congress.
yeah,
That's kind of the
seems
tip of the
it
iceberg.
seems like the only time Congress wants its power back is when the president's of the other party.
Right. Isn't that interesting? Yeah,
But
that's
even
really
they
interesting.
still don't do a whole lot towards taking it back.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hello, Katie.
Hi, Mama. Mama wants to be a part of this. The Iraq War has become a bit of a political football. This is sort of what you were talking about at the beginning.
Yes.
In political campaigns, whether or not a candidate would have voted yes on the Iraq War resolution had they been in office then is almost a political litmus test. We ask everybody now.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton voted for the resolution, and now she argues that she was misled by President Bush by inaccurate information. Colin Powell now supports recommending the invasion, although he says that saying the intelligence which he was given beforehand was wrong. Do you feel that the invasion was the right thing to do? I think you've already kind of answered this, even though the
Yeah.
intelligence wasn't what was being touted, but you can speak to the part on people running for office and
Yeah.
yeah.
And that I don't like them going back on it. I mean, they had
Mhm.
more information than we had,
Yeah.
than the
Own it.
American people had. So if they got the American people to go along with it,
Right.
if they didn't think it was solid, it was up to them to call it out and say, no, we don't think this information is correct.
Right.
Or they didn't, if they had the information and didn't, it's because they felt that their jobs were, the voters would be angry at them for it.
Mhm.
And sometimes when it comes to war, you got to stand, you got to do what you think is right.
Yeah. And remain
You
standing
can't just,
with what you said.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
one of the instances that gets me the most is Harry Reid when the war wasn't going so good in Iraq with in the insurgency, and on the floor of the Senate he says this war is lost. I'm like, really, you voted for it,
Yeah.
and now that we're in the middle of it, you decide it's time to go home?
You never undermine your soldiers in the field.
No, and that definitely was.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the
I
thing
mean,
with Clinton, stand behind what you did and own it.
exactly.
Apologize. Don't blame it on everybody else. Don't blame it on Bush. Don't blame it on Powell. Own it. Because if you didn't do your due diligence, if you were even a little bit unsure, we're talking about war and we're talking about lives. So own that you went with the
Oh,
resolution.
yeah, or yeah, you even just say, nah, it may have been a mistake, but I thought it was good at the time, and I probably would have made the same decision again, knowing
Mhm.
what I know.
Yeah.
Knowing what I knew then, I don't fault my decision. Maybe I'd
Right.
change it now, but
Right. In
just
fact,
to flat out down and say it was wrong
when I
gets me.
was preparing for our interview, I listened to a podcast because I listen to a million podcasts, and this one was it was Dick Durbin and another senator, and I don't remember his name, but both of them had voted against the war. And you know what? More power to them. They stand by their
Yeah,
decision, and they feel that history proved them right. But at the time, both of them said they felt it was probably a career ender.
uh, I think Dick Durbin's pretty safe in Illinois.
I think Dick Durbin was pretty safe. This other guy, I think he was from Kentucky, maybe definitely a southern state, and he
Uh,
felt that he was going to lose his office, and he didn't end up losing his office.
no,
Um, but he still stands behind not voting for the resolution. You know what? That takes as much guts
yeah,
as it takes
yeah,
to stand by having voted for the resolution.
yeah. Especially then when we were still hurting after 9/11 and we're being
Mm-hmm.
overly cautious and wanting to make sure it didn't happen again.
Right.
That did take some guts, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me, in your opinion, what important good results came from the Iraq War?
one was one thing that we also wanted to try to accomplish as a side mission is to show other people that we're not going to take this. Like I just remembering Gaddafi in Libya. After we deposed Saddam Hussein, he said, "All right, I'm giving up. Here's my nuclear weapons.
Right.
I'm not trying to advance it anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he still wasn't a good guy, but he was less of a danger,
Right.
and
Right.
that was a definite positive.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that we brought democracy to Iraq in any real or lasting way?
No,
Yeah.
no. I think we could have, but it would have
Mm-hmm.
taken decades,
Mm-hmm.
if probably close to a century.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we could have had at least a reliable partner. I mean, more reliable than Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
We could have had a better relationship than what it is now because now they're basically an Iranian
Yeah.
proxy, right?
Right.
So we could have avoided that and possibly had some stability, at least in one country there,
Right. Right. And
where we,
after the war had started, there was a lot of, oh, we're making the world safe for democracy. We're bringing democracy to Iraq. It was almost like this sideshow. Like, look over here. Look at this democracy.
yeah, they did do a good job of making us think that this is possible. We can do it.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really understand that we don't think the same way as
Mm-hmm.
as many other countries. We're
Right.
Western. There's so many different areas of the world that think differently. I mean, just have a
Mm-hmm.
different concept of what is freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Middle East is a whole different ball of wax.
Uh, I do. My brother worked as a contractor in Iraq for a while, and I asked him about it, and he said they don't know what it is, but they want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said they were proud as heck to show him their purple finger from voting.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they did want some kind of change,
Mm-hmm.
but probably not the change we were trying to give them,
Mm-hmm.
but they wanted something positive.
Right. Well, I think you can argue they're Americans that don't understand what the blessings of liberty are.
Yeah,
Yeah, they really
that
don't. They go out and vote, and we encourage everybody
no,
to vote. Maybe everybody doesn't
like
need to vote.
like Ron Paul once said, I didn't think liberty would be such a hard sell.
Did you have to do that with the Ron Paul?
Sorry.
I love my Ron Paul. Anyhow, let me go back to my questions. Do you feel that we improved our situation in respect to Iran and our ability to both monitor its activities and strike should it threaten our allies in case of aggression on our part?
Like I said, if we would have been able to accomplish a meaningful change over time,
Yeah,
we could have, but as it was now, no.
yeah, yeah, I
Definitely.
agree with that too. Yeah, I mean, we're still dealing with Iran constantly.
Yep. Yep. And probably will be for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this whole current thing with Khashoggi has me wondering, because he was trying to actually bring maybe a few reforms anyway. I mean, he was on Israel's side telling the Palestinians take whatever deal you can get. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if maybe it's trying to tie it to Mohammed bin Salman is trying to get him out because he does because they're fighting Iran and Yemen. So I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if Iran's trying to get rid of its enemies through that means instead of through war or through other means.
Yeah, yeah, makes you think.
Yeah.
In a larger sense, World War One brought peace to Europe, but at great cost. World War Two defeated Hitler, contained communism, and neutralized the Japanese threat. These ideas are our takeaways from the wars the United States have engaged in. This is how we justify where they were important, right? We have to put a tagline on everything. This
Yeah,
is why we did this.
exactly.
This is why we did that.
Yes, they were.
4,424 servicemen and women died in Iraq. Estimates number the wounded at 32,000. It's impossible to count the number of walking wounded. We're dealing with it with my
Yeah.
brother right now. It's
Oh,
horrible. The cost to the American economy of those lost workers, to the families robbed of their joy and their family members, and to the taxpayers for their care, it's unestimable.
yeah.
So tell me why this sacrifice was important in a historical sense. If you were to put the tagline on it.
Hmm. Have to take a minute. Hmm. Well, I think in one respect it was righting a wrong by that the wrong of not taking him out in the first place. In another one, I think uh, we felt and probably a good measure been convinced that it was something that would uh, make us more secure and free. Not only taking him out, but sending the message even more than uh, Operation Enduring Freedom had by making sure that we will still go after you if you intend to do us harm. And I think the after effect that we were hoping for would have been positive of a strong Iraq and a decent country in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, it didn't go that way. It didn't end up that
Yeah,
way.
yeah. And what an awful war to wage, when you think about the IEDs and you think about the door to door combat that
Yeah,
they. Just what an awful. I mean, Vietnam was awful, Korea was awful, this was awful, war is awful.
yeah, yeah.
What we ask of our soldiers is an awful thing. We have to remember that.
That's another thing that got me thinking about this is every year my son and his school do a parade for Veterans Day with uh, their servicemen, their kids there, and my son loves it, so I do it.
Got you the
But
day off.
yeah, but I was my first year there. I was talking to a Marine Corps vet from Vietnam, and he said that whenever they got back home, they just put the uniforms away and did never talk to anybody about it
Yep.
unless they knew that that person was in the military too in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I wonder if by saying that the Iraq War was wrong, if we're in some measure doing that to them
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
And
I
I
agree with you.
don't want that.
Yeah, I did an interview. I'll share my YouTube page with you. I did an interview with my husband's uncle who was in Vietnam, and he talked about coming back and how he threw his uniforms away and kind of walked away from the fact that he had served his country because there was so much hatred and people throwing things at
Yeah,
soldiers.
yeah. I'm very glad that nobody has been treated like that in the Iraq War, but
Mhm.
still, just the after effects of just everybody. Oh yeah, it was the wrong thing to do. I mean, even the Republican Party,
Yeah.
which everybody in the Republican Party supported it, even now it's
Mhm.
taken as fact that yeah, it was a wrong thing. We don't discuss it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're dealing with the consequences, that's for sure, on so many
Yeah.
levels. Um, yeah, it's heavy stuff. It's a lot to deal with. Anything else that you'd like to say on the issue? Any other things you'd like to get across?
Just I I really do feel for the people with uh, family members and who were wounded there, because my dad doesn't use the F word very often, but he said if anything would have happened to you all over there, I'd say turn the whole fucking thing to a sheet of glass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that it's not, it's like we were never there. The country is not stable. We don't even know who's in charge. Iran's the big boy on the block now, and
Yeah.
Iraq's not even a player. Now it does kind of feel like, well, what were we there for?
Right. What did we accomplish? And that's
Yeah,
rough. That's
I
rough.
was
Yeah.
and I was lucky. I was on a ship. I was out at sea.
Right.
And
Right.
no
Yeah.
country, no country has a navy that can match ours, especially in that area of the world. So I was safe, but I can't imagine what it's like for
Mhm.
you and your family and
Yeah.
others like you.
Yeah, it altered my brother's entire life, and he wasn't directly injured, but he's got internal, pain that he has to deal
Yeah.
with, and
Oh yeah.
they took their youth away. And that's what war does. It
Yeah.
takes
And now you look at it and it does feel like it was for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a terrible feeling. It wasn't for nothing, and that's how do we
Yeah.
express that to them and let them know that.
Yeah. And that and I will always hold it against President Obama
Mm,
for pulling us out too early.
yeah.
One of my friends told me one time that he still holds Black Hawk down a bit against Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
That that is one thing that people in government and other civilians need to realize. Whatever you send us to go do, we just want to do it,
Yeah.
get it done.
Yep.
We don't want to be told no, it's over. When no, wait, it's not over. You told us to go do this and we
Right.
didn't accomplish it. You don't tell us it's not over yet.
It feels like a
We didn't
loss.
accomplish the objective.
Yeah.
You gave us this objective. You told us we're done before we finish that objective.
Right.
We don't like operating like that. We don't operate like that.
Right. Right. That's not how you're trained.
No,
Right.
no.
Right. Wes, I thank you so very much for spending
Oh,
time
you
with
are
me
very
and
welcome.
talking about this. It
You're
was a
very
good
welcome.
conversation.
Yes, it was. Good to talk to you, Donna. I
Yeah, good
really
to
enjoyed
talk to you.
it.
Take care. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.